Thank you, and thank you to the Combat Antisemitism Movement for giving me the platform to speak today about our office's important work. My boss, Deborah Lipstadt, as you know, is a special envoy to monitor and combat anti-Semitism, and she's currently in Israel to witness what happened, or the aftermath firsthand. As we know, there's been a tsunami of anti-Semitism, including quite violent acts, since October 7th. I think what also happened in the aftermath of October 7th presented a certain type of moral clarity on how comfortable anti-Semites seem to be throughout the world and on the streets of many cities internationally. When we came into office, one of our main objectives was to help people understand what anti-Semitism is. As we know, anti-Semitism is ubiquitous, it's free-flowing, it comes from every region, no country's immune, and it comes from all across the political spectrum. In fact, to my friends on the right, who constantly are calling out anti-Semitism on the left, and often correctly, and I have friends on the left who can see with 20/20 vision anti-Semitism on the right. But unless you're calling out the anti-Semitism right next to you with people you agree with on almost every issue, ultimately you're weaponizing anti-Semitism for politics, which overall undermines the entire fight against anti-Semitism. We also want to ensure that people take anti-Semitism seriously and not see it as just an issue. As some of the speakers before me mentioned, anti-Semitism is fundamentally a threat to democracy and order. We work to help people, Jews and non-Jews, understand the interconnectedness of anti-Semitism and how, with other forms of hate, and how it is a genuine threat to our national security and the goal of protecting human rights more broadly. Though our office is remit as overseas, unfortunately domestic and international anti-Semitism are linked, which is why President Biden, for the first time ever, created a comprehensive United States plan to combat anti-Semitism with over 100 individual actions that the United States is going to be taking in the near future. And then overseas, as you know, we urge other countries to embrace the IRA definition as we do, and more governments are doing so. And I know the OAS has played a key role in that. We're also urging countries to appoint special envoys, like Fernando Lautenberg, and others, so that there's a point person for us to communicate with, special envoy to special envoy, but also so they have somebody within their own government who's an expert in combating anti-Semitism from within. Some of you may remember the issue with Lufthansa Airlines around a year and a half ago. Not going into the specifics to rehash it, but by the time our office called our German colleague, Dr. Felix Klein, he was already on top of it. He was working within the government to address it in a way that just couldn't have happened without someone concentrated on this issue. Within the past year, Ambassador Lipstadt and I have visited numerous countries to convey that message, government to government. On Sunday, I just came back from a 10-day trip in Latin America, where I visited Argentina, Chile, and Brazil. So I became quite familiar with the translators, because unfortunately I speak neither Spanish nor Portuguese. And part of the message we were conveying is that it's essential to our bilateral relationship with each of those countries that we take anti-Semitism seriously, both for our government-to-government relations, but also to ensure that your local Jewish community feels safe. Not just that they're safe from violent anti-Semitism, but they feel free to practice their Judaism in a expansive way. It's not just about protecting Jewish lives, it's about enriching Jewish life in those individual countries. I started in Argentina, where government and civil society are quite strong. As many of you know, they have a special envoy, a wonderful ambassador on anti-Semitism, and that they're a full member of IRA. So from there, I went to Chile and was able to engage with the government directly, along with Jewish leaders and civil society, and did the same in Brazil. In Brasilia, I met with the federal police, who walked me through how they deal with anti-Semitism, especially online, and that they enforce their laws quite robustly and have a nuanced understanding of IRA after Rio and Sao Paulo have embraced the definition recently. And, we have to remain vigilant in that region. There's no region that's immune from anti-Semitism, and just like our office has concentrated on Europe and the Middle East, so too we should concentrate on Latin America. As we all know, since October 7th, we've seen a sharp increase in anti-Semitism throughout the world, including violent attacks. It remains a serious problem throughout the world, and in Latin America, even though in Latin America the violent incidences aren't quite as high as others. But just so we're all clear, targeting Jewish communities with hate, intimidation, or violence is not defending the rights of Palestinians, it's just anti-Semitism. So many national leaders and international organizations across the globe have condemned anti-Semitic acts in the strongest terms. At the same time, since October 7th, there have also been demonstrations in many countries, including some countries and regions which we represent, in which individuals sickeningly celebrated the murder of Jews and even called for more anti-Semitic assaults. And again, just to be clear, there's no context in which calling for the genocide of Jews is not anti-Semitic. Unfortunately, it's also not uncommon that when there is an increase in anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and hatred against Jews, members of other marginalized racial and ethnic communities are also targeted. Leaders in the international, national, and local levels need to understand and condemn anti-Semitism and Jew hatred immediately and unequivocally wherever it shows its ugly head. Ambassador Leguzzo's and Commissioner Lautenberg's role are more important now than they have ever been in the region, and bringing the cause of educating governments and bringing civil society together in this fight. We also welcome OAS's efforts to advance the mantra of Secretary General's more rights for more people, and the OAS's Secretariat for Access to Rights and Humanity, as well as the Inter-American Commission on Human Rights, which all play key roles in supporting our common goals in social inclusion, equity, and diversity. A key part of my office's mandate is also to advocate for the embrace of the IRA working definition on anti-Semitism, inclusive of its examples. The working definition helps government at all levels, law enforcement, international organizations, the media, public figures, civil society, interfaith groups, and educators call out and condemn anti-Semitic hatred and discrimination. According to IRA, there are 43 countries, including political entities and regional and state local governments, that have embraced the definition. Several countries in the OAS region, including Argentina, Brazil, Colombia, Guatemala, Uruguay, Canada, and the United States have embraced the definition in one way or another, which is a positive step. The United States is your ally and is available to help us together advocate for the use of the definition as a tool. As we reach the end of Hanukkah, sometimes we're asked, what's the best way to combat anti-Semitism? I've laid out a few, and we know others, and we will work with Cam on identifying the best practices. I think though, Hanukkah actually teaches an important lesson. While the rabbis may have had some conversations about which way to light the Hanukkah, the way we light the Hanukkah and as we approach all the candles being lit is one at a time. And each day, you bring more and more light into your home. Because when you look into combating anti-Semitism, you look into the darkness, you can't see the end of it. It continues and continues and continues. But if you take every day, we work together as countries and as civil society and as leaders to just try to chip away at the hate one by one, and then eventually as we reach that goal of defeating hate and combating anti-Semitism, things become a little lighter. So while the task might be overwhelming, we are not excused to try to make it better. So that even a little bit of light, wherever it's found, can dispel the darkness and illuminate a path forward as we work together. It's important now more than ever, and let us carry that into the new year and next year.
Keyak. If we have some questions from the audience now about the work of the Special Envoy's office, I can bring the mic around for you.
Hi. How have you seen anti-Semitism manifest differently as a policy challenge from region to region?
So let me just share, when diplomats come to visit us in Washington, D.C., they're often the best their individual countries or regions have to offer. They're often literally Western educated. They speak many languages, including English, sometimes better than I do. But even as we talk with them about the work we can do together, and even when they're on their least anti-Semitic behavior, visiting us, sometimes their educational background, or at least the unconscious bias in their various countries and in their government seeps through. So there are some regions in which there just aren't that many Jews. Some regions where there used to be a lot of Jews and there aren't that many anymore. And so sometimes with those governments and members of civil society where they exist, we try to, I know this sounds so simple, but humanize Judaism and Jews. And so sometimes we'll explain first the history of Jews in their country. So some of them will have a small indigenous Jewish population, but some of them Jews, for one reason or another, are no longer there, and we'll explain the history. Because once we start talking about discriminating against a neighbor, a fellow person in your country, it becomes a lot easier to understand. But there's just something comfortable for the anti-Semite or for the unconscious bias that permeates our society about the stereotype when it comes to Jews. So it is horrific but unsurprising that Jews get attacked just crossing the street because of some action that Jerusalem has taken. The idea of protesting in front of a restaurant that happens to be owned by a Jewish chef is not criticizing Israel. It's not even harsh criticism of Israel. It's targeting Jews for something some other government, whether it's the Israeli government or any government, some action that they've taken. And if you just take it out of the Jewish context and talk about, for example, the way the People's Republic of China treats the Uyghurs, it would be the height of absurdity to go protest in front of a Chinese restaurant because of how the PRC treats the Uyghurs. But that's exactly the same thing. And for some of these countries, it's so ingrained. Look, it's so ingrained in our own country. So even more so for countries that aren't as engaged on these issues. Maybe there's a history of anti-Semitism in the government, or at least in the society, just to break down the groove in society where the anti-Semitic stereotypes just slide right in. And then in some of these countries, there are actually quite robust Jewish communities, or Jewish communities that have been there for a long time. And so when we're talking to the government, we'll talk about the safety of their Jewish community, because they share every aspect with their fellow citizens, except for the fact that these ones happen to be Jewish. So it's about bringing it back to the fundamental humanity of the Jewish community and individual Jews. And sometimes, and it's not a great situation when we have to urge governments to do this, but the idea of keeping their own citizens safe. When we have government officials who refuse to meet with their own Jewish community, their own citizens, that's a problem. And when they meet with the citizens of other religions or other ethnicities or racial groups, we have to ask the question, and we do as a government, why not with the Jews?
Great. We have time for one more question.
Thank you. A quick question. Is there any program or initiative, or have you thought of engaging the Hispanics, the Latin American community within the United States as an ambassadors or to promote anti-Semitism across the country here in Latin America?
Yeah, well, we'd love to work with CAM and the OAS to do that. As part of the anti-Semitism plan, there's an educational aspect that is multilingual and across communities. The thing is, there's no community whatsoever that's immune from this hate. And so it's important that we talk to each individual community where they are, and essentially, and importantly, in their own language. So yes, the White House is working on that with all communities, including the Hispanic community, because it's something we all have to work on together. I mean, when we talk about, just to be clear about how anti-Semitism is a danger to all societies, but especially democracies, when you think that the Jew is behind the financial system, behind the media, behind your government, fundamentally the citizen who believes that can no longer hold their government accountable because they believe it's some other nefarious actor, some puppet master who's controlling everything about their society. And so when, especially in democracies, citizens aren't able to hold their governments accountable at the ballot box or otherwise, the worst comes to mind because they really feel, someone who actually believes in the anti-Semitism conspiracy really feels that everything is being controlled elsewhere. And then, what can you possibly do if you can't hold your government accountable? So it's not just, if it were just about keeping local Jewish communities safe, that would be enough. Obviously, one of the most important, if not the most important role of government is to keep their citizens safe, especially racial, ethnic, or religious minorities. That would be enough to combat anti-Semitism. It also has this destabilizing effect on a society that is a danger to all the citizens of any country. This idea that there's some nefarious actor out there who's controlling your government. I mean, we have enough time holding our government accountable without conspiracy theories. And then when you actually buy into it, it really makes people feel hopeless.